Welcome to the Dealmaker Zone. My name's Steve Stone and I'm your host. Our guest tonight is Rachel Cook. She's the CEO and founder of Seeds. Seeds is an application that you can use on your mobile phone to purchase goods, virtual goods, and which allows you to help people in the developing country access microloans. Rachel, welcome to the Dealmaker Zone.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you so much for being with us. So usually I start by asking the guests about their background, but in this case, I want you to kind of tell us about the company, just to make sure I got the intro right. So tell us about Seeds.
Sure. So what Seeds does is if you're an app developer, you can visit our website and take some of our code and build it into your code base. And then when your users are using your app, they can choose to make a virtual good purchase. So it could be a virtual coin, or it could be an item that you're buying, a physical item. And when they make that purchase, when your users make that purchase, we take a portion of it and channel it into making microloans to entrepreneurs in places like Kenya and Haiti. And the value proposition to an app developer is that we can make it much more likely that someone who's never spent money in their app will spend their first dollar because it's going into helping someone out. So yeah, if you've never pulled the trigger, you're much more likely to do so.
So when I'm playing the game, does something pop up saying purchase this additional item within the video game? It's from Seeds and a portion goes to helping somebody, or is it just seamlessly integrated into the app and I don't even notice? So do I know that this purchase ties to helping somebody else in the real world?
You're aware of it. You see the Seeds branding. You can learn more about the types of entrepreneurs that we're helping out. You can see a story of an entrepreneur. And it pops up at various times within the sequence of the app. So if you're playing a game, maybe you just ran out of coins and you probably want to get new coins. So then it pops up and it lets you know if you buy those coins, then we'll take the dollar behind your purchase and channel it to a woman making bracelets in Kenya.
Got it. So you're actually creating additional income for the game developer because this might be somebody who would not even purchase it.
Right. Yeah, we really think about it. I think about it as kind of the next iteration of capitalism, something that's, I think, really resonant with millennials, which is that everybody wins in this interaction. The developer makes more money, Seeds makes money, and the entrepreneurs get capital, and then they pay those microloans back with interest. So it's kind of this idea of a wholesome act, something that benefits self and others.
So I get that part. Now talk to me about the business from your vantage point. So you collect a percentage of the capital. How do you deploy that to the young entrepreneur in Kenya? And these are microloans, so how then do you recover the capital? Like, what's your whole setup there?
Sure, it's a great question. So this was like a challenge for us for a while because we didn't want to be two businesses, and we didn't want to be regulated as a financial institution ourselves. So I found out that Stripe, if you guys are, I assume a lot of the viewers would be familiar with Stripe, the startup that's now $1 billion company.
They're similar to PayPal to a certain degree.
Right, yeah. Actually, I think it's like $5 billion company now. But they had this hack in the beginning in which they would pool funds using their technology from the websites that had integrated their tech, and they would move it directly into a merchant account. And that way they never kind of held on to the funds themselves, so then they didn't have to be regulated as a financial institution.
Interesting.
So yeah, so we're doing a similar thing through a relationship with Barclays Bank and eventually with other partners as well, where we use our technology to pull the funds from the apps that have integrated our SDK, our software development kit, and then we move it into a Barclays account. They deploy the capital, they take care of all loan management, loan sourcing, due diligence, and then they pay us for use of funds.
Got it. So to a certain degree, Barclays or whoever your financial partner is sort of the loan underwriter, right? They're the ones responsible for the entrepreneur in Kenya who gets the capital, getting repaid for it, etc.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Very interesting model. Speaking of Barclays, you were part of the Techstars Accelerator, right, in New York. So how was that whole experience?
Yeah, you did your homework. So it was like
we actually met. You don't remember, but I actually was there that day.
Oh, you were? Oh,
yeah. I have one of my friends runs the. Her name's Kate. She runs the Barclays Techstar Accelerator. So I was kind of invited.
Cool.
So I was there on demo day. I stopped by. So how was the whole experience?
It was great. So I applied to Techstars 4 times over a 2.5-year period before we finally got in. I mean, the value there is the network for sure. It's just their whole thing is they kind of turn the stat on its head where 9 out of 10 startups fail, but 9 out of 10 Techstars startups are either still in business or have already been acquired.
That's an amazing stat.
Yeah, so it just kind of, I mean, that means they're good at selecting entrepreneurs, I think. But yeah, just getting access to the network has been huge, and kind of the knowledge that I can source through other founders that I couldn't get access to previously, and also just like introductions and so forth. The program itself was also valuable, but I went in kind of focusing on growth, and Techstars kind of has its own sort of like methodology where they want you to kind of get plugged in with mentors, and then they want you to focus on products. And then at the end, you're spending like 4 weeks focusing on your demo day presentation. And my background was in improv, so I like didn't want to like rehearse it as much as they wanted me to, frankly. But I mean, it was a well done demo day.
It was.
Yeah.
And most of the companies presenting on demo day had partnerships with Barclays announced the day of. It was almost as if you. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like, oh my God, if you don't announce a partnership with Barclays, what happened?
Yeah, that's where I was coming from. Yeah, that was the cool thing about the program, because so Techstars does this thing where they have these corporate partnerships with companies like Barclays or like with Nike or Microsoft.
Yeah.
So it's good for a startup if you're trying to work with a corporation, because they can ignore you for years.
They can. Organizations like Techstars definitely opens doors.
Right.
So definitely. So we're gonna reverse a little bit. We got deep into the business. Let's go back to who you are as a person. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you came about with the business.
Sure. So my background is in finance. I was a futures and equities trader, Eurodollar futures and Treasury futures, and just straight up stocks. And it was really fun. I started trading in 2008, like 6 months before the markets crashed. So I was buying gold ETFs all day long, because those were going up, because people, I think, when they're not trusting the market, then they want to get like a tangible good. So I really learned at that time that there's always a way to figure out how to make money, which is kind of reassuring, like that I trusted my own resourcefulness, I guess.
Yeah.
Trading was fun. I enjoyed trading itself, but the environment was just like not for me, and kind of all the stereotypes that I'd heard about it being like a boys' club were certainly true. I was always the only female trader, or one of the only female traders everywhere I worked. So I started kind of thinking more about, like, systemically speaking, why is that the case? Why aren't more women here, and why do they leave more quickly? I mean, I found out at one point that I was paid literally 15% less than all of my male colleagues who started at the same time. Even
for no reason, to just...
Yeah, I negotiated the salary at the beginning as well. So I mean, that could be a contributing factor. Maybe they were more aggressive, but I don't think so. And I had a better educational background, and I'd already been a profitable trader at other places, and only one of my colleagues had been. So it was just kind of like, yeah, that's one of the reasons women don't want to hang out in that environment, for sure. But I was thinking about that, like, why are there no women here? And at the time I was living in Chicago. And I'd gone there after graduating from Duke because I wanted to study improv and comedy writing at Second City.
Okay.
So I was there, trying to write sketches. The best sketch that I wrote, the best reviewed, was a sketch called Mime Brothel, about a brothel full of mimes. So it kind of had this feminist kind of slant, but it worked really well on stage. And, 20 people would see it on a good night or something. So I started thinking more about, okay, this is cool, but how could I reach a larger audience with things that I'm making? And kind of get my voice out there in a larger way. Yeah. And so I was thinking about that, thinking about, like finances and where that intersected with capital access for women. And one night I was sitting on the trading desk trading the European shift. So it was like 3 a.m. Chicago time. And I came across an op-ed in the New York Times about microfinance. Nick Kristof had written it. And it was about, kind of this very moving story about a woman in Pakistan who took out a microloan. I think it was for about $60 or something like that. Yeah. And she was in a marriage that was abusive, and her husband had gotten the family in $3,000 worth of debt, something like that, which was a debilitating amount. And she'd had 2 daughters, and he didn't understand. He didn't believe that girls had the same value that boys did.
Which is horrible.
Right.
I have 2 daughters myself. So,
really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Little ones.
Yeah. Cool. So she essentially was able to get this microloan for a small amount of money. She started a business. She got the family out of debt, And she ended up having another daughter after that, if I remember the story correctly. And the husband understood. He said something about, like, you know, women have the same value as men. He saw the contributions that she was able to make.
So that story really spoke to you.
Yeah,
It like touched you. Like, yeah, there's something there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I just got chills right now, kind of retelling it, and it was really moving. And the thing is, statistically speaking, women who get access to this capital are more likely to invest it in, you know, they use what they're making well, they invest in better nutrition and education for the families. Whereas statistically speaking, if they're, this is a huge bummer, but this is what the data says, if this capital is going into a man's hand in that situation, they're more likely to spend the money on tobacco, alcohol, and prostitution.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, so it's just like these women can't get capital, but they're a great investment and they do a lot of good with this money. So yeah, I just had one of those kind of flashes, just this epiphany. I've only had a handful of these in my life. And I just decided, what if I made a film about this topic, a documentary? I would be personally interested in seeing that film, and I don't think that exists yet. I didn't know anything about
Had you ever done a movie, a film before?
No, I did get Duke had a film certificate program at the time. They didn't have a major.
Okay.
So I got a film certificate.
There you go.
But it was just kind of, it was more theoretical. I didn't kind of, attempted to make a short and then overexpose the film, so I failed at even kind of doing that.
Oh.
But I realized if I found really experienced, talented people who kind of saw how passionate I was, that it could work. So,
So you put a crew together.
I put a crew together.
Travel the world.
Right. Yeah. So I was able to get this wonderful guy, Steve Hiller, who's based outside of Chicago. He'd worked on Groundhog Day and Fargo in terms of endearments, and he was kind of in the sunset of his career when I met him. And I think he could see that I was passionate, so he just decided, you know, that he'd work with me, and I didn't pay him, and he let us use his equipment.
Oh, wow.
And once he was involved, it was a legitimate project, so I'm grateful to him to this day. So yeah, we put a small group together, and we ended up filming in Paraguay, in 9 cities in India, and then in Nairobi, in Kenya, and then in Detroit.
Got it. And the seed of the
wordplay.
Yeah. So the idea for like building seeds kind of came about when you were in Kenya, right?
Yes.
So talk to us about that experience.
Sure. Yeah. So this was 2011. It's been 5 years. And the reason I was interested in going to Kenya was because I knew I had some idea about the leapfrog in technology that was happening on mobile phones there.
Okay.
So we went there, and it was just amazing to see the woman we filmed had taken out a microloan to open up M-Pesa stalls.
What are M-Pesa stalls?
So M-Pesa is a subsidiary of, as I understand it, of Safaricom, which is a subsidiary of British Vodafone. So it's like a telco.
Okay.
And they had found this opportunity where, because so many people in Kenya were unbanked, but they had mobile phones, that if they could funnel capital to someone's mobile phone, they could get money in people's hands. And there's just a huge opportunity there that the banks were missing. So this woman, Tobogo, who was 27 at the time, the same age as me, and like way more financially successful, had taken out a microloan, a larger size loan, to essentially open up these tiny stalls where people would come in and either text message her money and she would give them cash, or vice versa. So she was kind of like a human ATM. And she was killing it. And I mean, at that time, I think there were 25,000 M-Pesa stalls around Kenya. It was just amazing. 40% of Kenya's GDP was sent through text message that year already, and it's grown since then. So it was such a cool tech story. They were so far ahead of anything that was going on in the States. And I came back and I thought, like, there must be other industries in the developed world that this could plug into. I'm just not sure what. So around that time, I found out that the average social gamer playing games like Farmville was a woman in a red state, 43 years old, some college.
I would
2 kids.
never imagine that.
Right?
Like ever. like ever.
Yeah. It was counterintuitive. And even what was even more kind of like a fun fact or something that I came across was that even in World of Warcraft at that time, the demographic spending the most money on virtual gold in what I think of as like a very male-driven game was actually women over 35. So I found that out, and then I found out that web-based platforms for microlending like Kiva.org also tended to skew female in terms of user base. So I just figured like...
So there you figure out, okay, a lot of women like to give, a lot of women play video games, let's put the two together.
Exactly, yeah. And then kind of the other side effect that just was like, okay, there's something here, was finding out that Zynga, if you guys are familiar with Zynga, which was the company that made Farmville, they had done these charity campaigns. And they found that whenever they made kind of charity purchases available within an app, so after, if you recall, there was the earthquake in Haiti, which I think was in late 2010, Zynga did this campaign in Farmville where they sold virtual corn stalks or something like that. And you or I could play the game and buy those, and the game would let us know that the dollar behind our purchase was going to go to help rebuilding schools in Haiti after the earthquake. So the interesting byproduct of that was that Zynga found that they could make someone who'd never spent $1 in their game nearly 60% more likely to spend because they knew
it was going towards another cause.
Right, exactly.
So then you start working on it. When you were building the initial version of Seeds, was it a separate like game, video, mobile game that you built, or were you always going to do it where you're going to build an API to tie into other existing video games?
That's a great question. No, we actually made a game ourselves at first, and it was terrible. It kind of incorporated microfinance into the game mechanics, and it just didn't work. And I realized, I mean, gaming is hit-based, obviously. You know,
it is. It's a hits business.
Yeah, exactly, like the movie industry or something.
Yeah.
So, and we didn't have. I had no idea what I was doing there. I wasn't equipped to figure out how to make a hit game. So it became clear that we needed to pivot and create technology that would kind of get this same uptick in spending behavior in the games that were using the technology we created. So that was the smarter way to do it. And that's when we landed on creating the API, the application programming interface, which a developer can download directly. They wouldn't download it exactly, but they would integrate it
into their platform. So what has been your success so far? What sort of games are people using right now? People watching at home can kind of learn, and if they want to get involved. And
yeah, absolutely. So we're expanding into mobile commerce in addition to mobile gaming. The game I would point you guys toward now, if you want to check out what's going on, is a game called Mini Golf Stars 2. Made by a company called Game Masons, which is incorporating Seeds right now. You can buy unlimited lives, and the purchase will go to making microloans. And then, especially with Mother's Day coming up, we're in an app called Jevelo that is allows you to custom design jewelry, and then you order it through the app. And when you do that, part of your purchase will go to Seeds. So we're still kind of figuring out how it's going to work in mobile commerce. It's kind of a different value proposition for an app developer. But yeah, there's a lot of data that supports that someone knowing money goes into good will make them more likely to spend.
No, absolutely. It does make a lot of sense. I mean, there are literally companies like Tom's, right, where you'd like buy one and then give one to somebody else, and they like build a whole culture around that. So I totally see it. So let's go back to Kenya. While you were in Kenya, something tragic happened to you, right? Can you kind of talk to us a little bit about that and how that kind of shaped you as an entrepreneur?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, it was just this crazy story in which when I was last in Nairobi working on the back end, kind of making sure, that we could find, the way we approached this was like, okay, I'll go to Kenya, I'll make sure that we can find sort of really qualified borrowers who are going to use this capital.
Yes.
And it was immediately clear that that was the least difficult problem for us to solve because there's so many well-qualified borrowers who need capital. We just have to get it to them. So we were there, we met with women there, we just used M-Pesa ourselves to funnel our own money to these women. And I had this bizarre night one night with a friend who was a white kid from Iowa, so like we're very obvious tourists. And we were out, this kind of sets up the story in the wrong way, but we wanted to get our fortunes told by a witch doctor.
And it's very common in
Which
Kenya.
is fairly common. I mean, it's like a specific tribe that is known, I guess, for...
providing the service.
Right, yeah.
Reading your fortune for you.
Right, exactly. So we found this guy. There are signs all around Nairobi that say, like, get your fortune told. So we just checked it out one day, like a Friday night for fun. And we ended up being in a place it was in Kawangwari, one of the slums, but it was actually the slum that we'd spent the most time filming in the year before.
Yeah.
So I kind of like
you felt somewhat comfortable.
Right, exactly. And it just turned out that apparently there'd been an Al-Shabaab attack. Al-Shabaab is one of the fringe groups associated with Al-Qaeda the week before in this exact location. And I think 3 people were killed. So we were in the car with this witch doctor who was just like a nice guy. He was just like, whatever, we were going to pay him a little bit of money,
Was he even a real witch doctor?
I
He was
don't
just
know.
hustling.
He was definitely a hustler. For sure he was a hustler. But we didn't even kind of get the chance to find out because a few minutes after he was just like started talking to us, suddenly, and our driver had gotten out of the car. We had a guy driving us around. He then... it was crazy. Cyrus, the driver, was just kind of hanging out in front of the car, and then suddenly there was this gate in front of us, and 3 guys in plain clothes with AK-47s just like came around the corner, and they were like, "Get out of the car, get out of the car," and we were just like, "Oh man, we're getting kidnapped. Like,
Or
what do we do?"
something,
Yeah. So I had a wallet and with me, and I just kind of I was wearing tights, and I kind of hid it in my tights, and they ended up making our driver get out of the car, and they just drove us away.
Wow.
And they never identified themselves. They never explained what was happening. They were just like, "Why were you in this place? It's so dangerous in this place."
And they're not even making you feel any safer driving.
Certainly not.
Yeah,
The opposite of that. Yeah. So they ended up, it turned out that they were cops, so it could have been much, much worse. But so they took us to a police station nearby and kind of interrogated us for a while and took our cell phones and wouldn't let us call the embassy. And then I think they just saw an opportunity, to extort some cash. So it was a Friday night, and they said that their boss was coming in Saturday morning, so we had to stay to talk to the boss. And so my friend Peter and my friend Peter's actually visiting and crashing with me in Brooklyn right now. It's like a weird coincidence. So we're just there, and no one knew where we were because they took our phones. So we were just hoping, that it would play out okay. And the worst moment, whatever, it's not like I'm not Nelson Mandela or something. It was like a one-night thing, but
But it is scary. You're in a foreign country, and
Yeah, because we didn't have any ability to communicate, and we had no control, right?
So how did you get out of this? How did it end?
Yeah, so we stayed that night. They kept us kind of in a separate room for a while, and they treated Cyrus poorly. Like, they were much
Because he's a guy, so yeah.
Yeah, and I think because he was local, I guess, but it was not fair what they did. And
Cyrus is the driver?
He was the driver, yeah. And then they had Peter and I eventually go into separate cells. There was like a men's cell and a women's cell that were just like, there were several people in both. And that was the moment where it was kind of scariest because we didn't know if we'd see each other again, and it was kind of the stereotype of what I would assume a developing world jail would be like or something. There was just like a hole in the wall that some light was coming in. It was cement and just like a dirt floor. And these other women in there were really cool, which made me think that they were also maybe in there for no reason. And I remember I just sat on the ground and just kind of like meditated and just like hoped that everything would be all right. And then the boss did come the next day. They let us out of the cells. They then told us that they started kind of negotiating.
Because now they said, "Oh, we want some cash," so they wanted you to go get some cash.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
So what happened at the situation we were supposed to get some cash?
Yeah, sure. So Peter was living in Nairobi at the time with his wife. So they were like, "Okay, we're going to get this money." They were negotiating with him. They didn't talk to me very much. So they took us to Peter's house. And the idea was that they were going to look at our passports to confirm that we were who we said we were, but it was, to get cash or whatever. So we go there, they kind of go through Peter's stuff. They didn't find any cash. So then they decided to take us to an ATM at like a local kind of like market area. And we were in separate cars at this time for some reason. Peter was in one car and I was in another car by myself with a driver. And we go there and we pull in. I see that they make Peter get out of the car and go to the ATM. And I'm just kind of sitting in the other car with the driver. And then eventually he gestures to me and tells me that they want me to go to the ATM as well. And it was like 2 p.m. on a Saturday. It was a sunny day. It was kind of this parking lot area. So I thought, like, I should probably make a scene. I mean, it was like a semi-calculated decision. I didn't know if we'd have another opportunity. I didn't know what they would do after they got the money. I also had, I mentioned I went to Duke. I had a couple Duke interns staying with me in my apartment, and that was going to be the next destination because they were going to look at my passport as well.
And you just, I was just very concerned. So you decided to make a scene then.
Right. So I got out of the car. I slipped into a shop kind of when, I mean, they weren't like, they were preoccupied with Peter still at that point. And there was this little Indian Kenyan woman, 5 foot tall or something, behind the counter. And I just went up to her and I was like, can you please help us? You know, these cops have captured us. They took our phones. They wouldn't let us call anyone, let alone the embassy. Could you please call the U.S. Embassy? And she was like, get behind me, get behind me. So I, went behind her behind the counter. And they realized where I was very quickly. And kind of the worst of the guys came in. It's like 6'3" guy. He's got his AK-47. At first he's all like, she's our friend. She should come with us. The woman's like, she doesn't have to do anything she doesn't want to do. And he physically pulled me, eventually just grabbed my dress and pulled me into the parking lot area. And at that point it was like, all right, I'm committed. I made this decision. We can't go back with them now. They're livid. So I was just, I don't know if it was 10 minutes or 45 minutes. I had no sense of time. I remember feeling like, oh man, I made the situation worse for Peter and I'm so sorry. And
eventually did the embassy come back? Did someone from the embassy come?
Yeah, she was like a hero. So she called the embassy and they came. And before they came, they took us to a separate jail. So it was just kind of we didn't know what was going to happen. But I remember that was the only time I got emotional because I saw the embassy official come into the jail, and it was just okay, now it's gonna be cool. And it worked out well because they accused us of being terrorists because we were in this place where Al-Shabaab had attacked, or that's what they said. So they brought in anti-terrorism cops who were the smartest cops who quickly realized that it was total BS.
Got it. Well, that's such a scary story, but I'm glad, you ended up fine and you're still involved in going back to Kenya and continuing with your project and everything.
Yeah. And the positive kind of, it's not a silver lining exactly, but what it helped me to realize was that in places like Kenya where the economy is less robust, if you're a cop, you take that job with the assumption that you're going to get a supplementary income through extorting cash. It's just socially accepted. So with something like Seeds that gets more capital into the hands of women who are creating these legitimate businesses, it's going to help. It's going to take a while, but it can help kind of shift that sort of socially acceptable corruption. So I feel good that we can help to kind of shift that type of experience.
Awesome. We're out of time. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, I want to do a plug. If there are any app developers out there or anyone that wants to use those apps, again, check out Mini Golf Stars 2 and Jevelo. And then our website is PlaySeeds.com, PLAYSEEDS.com. Check it out. You can build us into your app, make more money, and help people out in the developing world.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Steve.
And that's our show for this week. If you want to be on the show or send us your feedback, please shoot us an email at show@AnySizeDeals.com. And like Rachel mentioned earlier, it's PlaySeeds.com, right? And that's the last word.
No matter how you choose to live, be yourself. Cause your authenticity is a gift, so be appreciated.
Gotta be yourself, be authentic, and you see that you be free as well. Gotta be yourself, gotta be yourself, be authentic, and you see that you be free as well.
Oh, you really gon' find it out. Your heart will tell you what life's about.